Birmingham, 1959. A city forged in fire and metal, streets lined with soot-streaked terraces, foundries roaring through the night. Everything smells of coal smoke and engine oil. This is Aston, a working-class neighbourhood tucked beneath the grey, wet Midlands sky of England. It's where 11-year-old John Michael Osbourne walks to school in shoes with cardboard soles, his uniform second-hand and 2 sizes too big. His dad, Jack, is on the night shift at the General Electric Company. His mum, Lillian, packs tins at the local factory. There's never quite enough to go around, but you don't complain. You just get on with it. John, people call him Ozzy, isn't like the other kids. He doesn't understand his lessons, can't read properly. Numbers confuse him. He stares at the blackboard and hears only noise. The teachers call him lazy. One of them throws a shoe at his head. Another tells him he'll never amount to anything. What no one knows, not even Ozzy himself, is that he's dyslexic. And in 1950s Birmingham, that's not a diagnosis. It's a curse. So he plays the fool instead, does silly voices, impressions, makes the other kids laugh, gets by on chaos. But at night, when the laughter's gone, he lies in bed afraid of the dark. Sometimes he wets himself. He talks to God, ghosts, or whoever presents themselves first. He's obsessed with horror films. Bela Lugosi, Vincent Price, creepy comics with dripping fonts and wide-eyed corpses. He has nightmares almost every night, and he loves it. One day he hears She Loves You by the Beatles, and everything changes. He doesn't just like it, he feels it, in his chest, in his bones. It's the first thing in his life that makes sense. Suddenly there's colour in the world, but music won't save him from what comes next. At 15, Ozzy leaves school with no qualifications. He works odd jobs: apprentice plumber, horn tuner in a car factory, abattoir worker. He sees animals killed every day. He doesn't flinch, he just watches. Then he steals a few televisions with a mate, gets caught. His dad, a proud man, refuses to bail him out. Ozzy spends 6 weeks in Winson Green prison. Cold, loud, terrifying. He cries every night. When he gets out, something inside him has shifted. He's not scared of much anymore, but he still doesn't know who he is or what he's for. Until one day he spots a flyer in a music shop window. A band needs a singer. And Ozzy, he's about to scream himself into legend. It's 1967. Birmingham is still a city of sparks and smoke, but something's changing. Across the UK, teenagers are growing their hair, forming bands and tuning into pirate radio. Ozzy is 18, fresh out of jail and still drifting. One day, in a music shop on Lodge Road, he pins a handwritten ad to the notice board: Ozzy Zig needs gig. The words are ambitious. The truth is less so. He owns a cheap microphone, a dodgy speaker, and has never sung in a band. But it's enough to catch the eye of a drummer named Bill Ward and a guitarist called Tony Iommi. Tony is quiet, serious, and surgically precise with his guitar. He's also missing the tips of 2 fingers, sliced off in a sheet metal accident on his last day working at a factory. Most people would give up. Tony melts down plastic bottles, shapes prosthetic fingertips, and detunes his strings to ease the pain. The sound, slower, heavier, doom-laden, that detuning would become the foundation of an entirely new musical language. Bill brings in his old mate, Geezer Butler, a sharp-witted bassist with a philosophical bent and a love of the occult. Geezer writes lyrics about war, madness, and the end of days. The band comes together under the name Earth, and they start gigging in smoky pubs and working men's clubs around Birmingham. The venues are rough. Fights break out. Glasses fly. Half the audience just wants to hear covers. But when they play their own material, dark, slow, loud, they feel something shift. One day, they're rehearsing near a cinema, showing the 1963 horror film Black Sabbath. Geezer makes an offhand comment. Funny, people pay money to be scared by horror films, but nobody's doing that in music. That's the light bulb moment. they rename themselves Black Sabbath and lean fully into the atmosphere. Haunting riffs, lyrics about evil, death, war, and the occult. Ozzy's voice isn't clean, it's piercing, spectral, unnerving, like a warning siren echoing through bombed-out ruins. He doesn't sing about fear, he embodies it. They write the song Black Sabbath in a day. It opens with a 3-note riff inspired by the Devil's Interval, a dissonant tritone banned by the church in the Middle Ages for sounding too evil. That song changes everything. In 1970 they record their debut album, Black Sabbath, in just 12 hours at Regent Sound Studio in London. No overdubs, no polish, just raw live takes. It's released on February 13th, Friday the 13th. Critics call it rubbish, tuneless, terrible, but teenagers, they buy it in droves. It climbs the UK charts. That same year they release Paranoid, written as filler in 20 minutes. It becomes their biggest single. The album includes War Pigs, Iron Man, Electric Funeral, dark anthems for a generation living under the shadow of the Cold War and Vietnam. Ozzy sings about paranoia, insanity, chemical warfare, death, and somehow it connects. It speaks to the fear and nihilism bubbling beneath the tie-dye surface of the hippie era. The band tours relentlessly. The UK, Europe, then America. In the USA, they arrive like aliens, long-haired Brits playing slow, monstrous riffs in a sea of denim and acid. Kids in Detroit, New York and Los Angeles go mad for it. They play sports arenas, outdoor festivals, small towns, any stage that will hold them. By 1972, Black Sabbath is one of the biggest bands in the world. Their music terrifies critics and electrifies fans. And at the centre of it all, Ozzy. Shambling, unpredictable, charismatic in his own deranged way. He doesn't talk between songs, he howls. He doesn't posture, he stares, wide-eyed, like a man possessed. But success doesn't mean peace, not for Ozzy. Fame is like pouring gasoline on a fire that was already out of control. The next few years will be a blur of hotel room wreckage, mountains of cocaine, and the slow, bitter unravelling of the band that invented heavy metal. And for Ozzy, the fall is just around the corner. The first time Ozzy does acid, he's in a field in England talking to a horse for an hour. That horse, he claims, gave him the best conversation of his life. And that sets the tone. By 1973, Black Sabbath are megastars. The money's coming in fast, and so is everything else. Cocaine, quaaludes, vodka, LSD, groupies, more cocaine, then more cocaine. They tour constantly. The US becomes their playground. Detroit, Chicago, LA, cities buzzing with fans and soaked in temptation. There are no mobile phones, no managers in the shadows, no rules, just hotel rooms with broken TVs and smashed furniture. Ozzy drinks from the moment he wakes up. Jack Daniels for breakfast, Quaaludes before lunch, weed in between. He doesn't remember half the shows, but somehow he still hits those howls. He's hilarious in a dark way, a court jester on speed. He pisses in hotel corridors. He throws meat at fans. He paints his face like a corpse and wanders around naked in strangers' hotel rooms. The band's entourage balloons, roadies, girlfriends, drug dealers, hangers-on. They call it the Sabs family, but there's nothing warm about it. It's a circus held together with bad wiring and duct tape. Tony Iommi, increasingly the band's leader, starts to get frustrated. Ozzy is unreliable. He misses rehearsals, forgets lyrics, sleeps through sound checks. In 1977, it gets worse. Ozzy's father, Jack, dies. Ozzy is devastated. He retreats into silence, then deeper into booze. He tries to leave the band. They pull him back. In 78, they record Never Say Die, a patchy, confused record. The magic's gone. The tension's high. And Ozzy? He's numb. I was in a chemical haze, he'd later say. I couldn't tell if it was Monday or September. During the tour that follows, he barely functions. The drinking is constant, the drugs are industrial, his voice is going, his mind is slipping. Back in England, he moves into a house in Stafford with a wolf for a pet, and a freezer full of meat just for the beast. Keeps a shotgun by his bed and forgets where he put it. The house is a fortress of paranoia. Eventually, even the band can't take it. In April, a meeting is called. No one wants to say it, but they all know. John Michael Osbourne is fired from Black Sabbath. The band he helped build, the sound he gave birth to, gone. He doesn't rage, he doesn't cry, he drinks. For 3 straight months. Alone in a hotel room in Los Angeles. Curtains drawn, bottles on the floor, drugs everywhere. Hookers coming and going, barely eating. He's not the Prince of Darkness anymore. He's just John, lost. And then, when it's almost over, she walks in. Her name is Sharon. 1979. Los Angeles. Ozzy is fading. He's living in a hotel on Sunset Strip, room service trays stacked in corners, mirrors smeared with cocaine, bottles drained, ashtrays overflowing, curtains always closed, days bleeding into nights, nights into nothing. He's not working, not showering, just drinking, watching TV, mumbling, surviving, barely. Then the door opens, and in walks Sharon Arden. She's the daughter of Don Arden, Black Sabbath's former manager, a man so feared in the music business he was known as the Al Capone of pop. But Sharon? She's nothing like her father. She's sharper, tougher, and she sees something in Ozzy that no one else does, a broken genius worth saving. So she makes a decision. She drags him, literally, out of that hotel. Gets him clean or at least functional and puts together a band. They call it the Blizzard of Oz. She handles every detail, contracts, bookings, rehearsals. She's not just his manager, she's his spine, his shield, his sanity. They hold auditions. After dozens of guitarists come and go, they find a skinny, soft-spoken kid from Santa Monica, Randy Rhoads. Classically trained, impossibly talented. His playing is fast but melodic, fierce but precise. He's a revelation. Ozzy cries the first time he hears him play. I'd never seen anything like it, he says. He was my brother. With Randy, bassist Bob Daisley, and drummer Lee Kerslake, they begin work on the debut solo album. Sharon books studio time, gets them housing, protects Ozzy from himself and from others. She's 27 years old, and she's in love. In 1980, Blizzard of Oz is released. Nobody knows what to expect, but it's huge. Tracks like Crazy Train, Mr. Crowley, and Suicide Solution light up radios and record stores. Ozzy's voice is raw, clearer than ever. Randy's solos soar. Critics are stunned. Fans go wild. Ozzy isn't just back, he's better than before. He tours relentlessly, soberish, focuseddish, supported by Sharon every step. She travels with him, manages the chaos, fights with promoters, fires lazy crew, and even physically throws people out of his dressing room. And she doesn't back down, not once. Ozzy proposes and they marry in 82. The tabloids sneer, industry types roll their eyes. But Sharon knows exactly what she's doing. She's turning Ozzy Osbourne into an empire. But just when everything's finally right, tragedy strikes. It is March 19th, 1982. The Blizzard of Oz tour is rolling through Florida. Ozzy, Sharon and the band have been riding in a customised tour bus, heading to a festival show in Orlando. Exhausted, they stop overnight at a quiet rural property near Leesburg, owned by their tour bus driver, Andrew Aycock, a former pilot. The sun rises on a clear, calm morning. No shows that day, just a few hours of rest. But Aycock has other plans. Parked on the property is a small Beechcraft F-35 plane. Aycock, impulsive and reckless, convinces a few people to take joyrides with him. It's supposed to be fun. A thrill. Something to kill time before they hit the road again. On one flight, Randy Rhoads climbs in. So does Rachel Youngblood, the band's seamstress. They don't want to fly, but Aycock insists. Ozzy is asleep in the tour bus, dead to the world. The plane takes off, buzzes low over the buses. Laughs are had at first, then it circles again, and again. Each pass lower, tighter, more erratic. On the third pass something goes wrong. The plane clips the top of Ozzy's bus, just inches from where he's sleeping inside. It spirals, crashes into a nearby garage, explodes into flames. Everyone on board is killed instantly. Randy Rhodes is 25 years old. Ozzy wakes to chaos, shouting, screaming, fire. He stumbles out of the wreckage-strewn bus. He sees the flames, smells the fuel. Then he hears the words, "Randy was on that plane," and he breaks. He drops to his knees, weeps, wails. He is inconsolable. "He was more than a friend," Ozzy would later say. "He was my musical soulmate, my little brother. He kept me alive." The days that follow are a blur. Ozzy shuts down. Sharon cancels shows, consoles him, picks up the shattered pieces. Ozzy is inconsolable. He locks himself in his bus, screaming. He refuses to tour. He drinks. He disappears again, just for a while. Sharon holds him together. Again. They carry on. Over the next few years, Ozzy releases album after album. Diary of a Madman, Bark at the Moon, The Ultimate Sin. He tours with Metallica, headlines massive festivals. He's still unpredictable, still dangerous, but he's not spiralling. And that's Sharon, always Sharon, behind every record, every tour, every comeback. Without her, there is no solo Ozzy. Without her, he's just a man in a dark hotel room, waiting for the end. But with her, he becomes something else entirely. By 82, Ozzy wasn't just back, he was unstoppable. His solo career had exploded with Blizzard of Oz and Diary of a Madman. Crazy Train wasn't just a hit, it was a mission statement. His new band was tight, the fans were rabid, and with Sharon by his side, organising, planning, saving him from himself, he was building something bigger than Black Sabbath had ever been. But the chaos never left him. If anything, it escalated. The stories from this period blur the line between horror, comedy, and surreal myth. And Ozzy, either too drunk to remember or too famous to care, let the madness roll on unchecked. It was supposed to be a peace offering. In early 81, at a meeting with CBS Records executives, Ozzy, trying to make a good impression, brought along 2 white doves. He was drunk as usual. Sharon had begged him to behave. He didn't. In front of stunned executives, he pulled one of the doves from his coat, bit off its head, and spat it on the floor. Blood everywhere. Screams. Someone fainted. Ozzy thought it was funny. CBS didn't. But they signed him anyway. Then came the bat. The infamous incident happened in Des Moines, Iowa, in 1982. On stage, someone threw a bat, yes, a real live bat, onto the stage. It was stunned, or maybe already dead. Ozzy, assuming it was fake, picked it up and bit its head clean off. The crowd went berserk. Security freaked out. Ozzy had to get a rabies shot, multiple needles in the stomach. From that moment on, he wasn't just a rocker. He was the Prince of Darkness, and the public couldn't get enough. But for Ozzy, reality was spiralling. The drinking intensified. The drugs were constant. Cocaine, pills, booze, anything that dulled the edge. His behaviour grew increasingly erratic. In 82, he was arrested in San Antonio, Texas, for urinating on the Alamo. Technically, he relieved himself on a cenotaph near the historic site. Not the actual Alamo, but it didn't matter. Texans were furious. Ozzy was banned from San Antonio for 10 years, and that wasn't even the worst of it. Sharon found him trying to strangle her one night while blacked out on drugs. She locked herself in a room and called the police. Ozzy was arrested, charged with attempted murder, and sent to rehab again. He didn't remember any of it. He never remembered most of it. These were the lost years. Ozzy was selling millions of albums, touring globally, becoming a legend, and inside he was disappearing. But through it all, Sharon held the line. She organised his life, cleaned up his messes, fired people who fed the addiction, and, when needed, dragged him to rehab. She fought him, loved him, saved him, again and again, and slowly, somehow, Ozzy began to stabilise, at least a little. He kept recording, Bark at the Moon, The Ultimate Sin, No Rest for the Wicked. The albums were hit and miss, but the fans never left. And the myth of Ozzy, backbiting, Alamo peeing, crooning lunatic with a Brummie accent and a heart of gold, only grew stronger. By the end of the 80s, he was both a punchline and a legend. He had no idea how he'd survived, but somehow he had. By the turn of the millennium, Ozzy Osbourne should have been done. He was in his 50s. He could barely walk a straight line, never mind a stage. He mumbled through interviews, doddered around the house in a bathrobe, and swore like a hungover pirate. And yet, the world was finally ready for Ozzy. In 2002, MTV rolled the dice on a bizarre concept, a reality TV show following the chaotic, dysfunctional, foul-mouthed life of a rock star and his family. It was called The Osbournes, and it changed everything. For many, it was their first real introduction to Ozzy, not as the bat-biting metal maniac, but as a doddering, bewildered dad, while their dogs crapped on the expensive rugs. It was hilarious, it was raw, it was totally unscripted, and people loved it. The show exploded, ratings smashed records. Ozzy became the unlikeliest TV dad in history. His children, Jack and Kelly, became overnight celebrities. Sharon, ever the general behind the scenes, became a star in her own right. Her sharp wit and cutting honesty made her a staple on talk shows across the world. But for Ozzy, the Osbournes was a double-edged sword. It gave him a whole new fan base. Teenagers who'd never touched a Black Sabbath record suddenly adored this weird, confused man who wandered into the kitchen looking for the remote control and ended up in the garden. His fame exploded again, this time not for the music, but for the madness. And yet, behind the laughs, the old demons still stirred. Ozzy was still struggling with addiction, though now it was painkillers and prescription meds more than hard drugs. Years of touring had wrecked his body. His hands shook, his speech slurred, but he was still there, still standing. And Sharon, ever the force of nature, pushed him forward. In 2001, she helped launch Ozzfest, a travelling metal festival featuring the heaviest names in the business. It was a genius move, giving old-school metalheads their fix, while introducing younger fans to the genre. It also gave Ozzy a stage again. His music wasn't forgotten, it was rediscovered. Bands like Slipknot, System of a Down and Korn, acts who'd grown up worshipping Ozzy, were now sharing bills with their idol. He was the godfather, the blueprint, the original madman, and the kids respected him. He wasn't just a TV personality, he was the real deal. And even though the public now knew him as a mumbling mess, that voice, was still there. That unmistakable howl, that raw, cracked power that made Crazy Train and War Pigs unforgettable. The love was real. He became a cultural icon, parodied on South Park, quoted by presidents, mocked, celebrated, feared, adored. Ozzy Osbourne had become something most rock stars never manage. Timeless. In 2007 he released Black Rain. Not his best, not his worst, but it didn't matter. He could sell out arenas on presence alone. A walking paradox. Fragile but indestructible. Absurd but somehow deeply wise. In 2010 he released Scream. And yes, it was his last solo album for a while, but by then the music was only part of the story. He'd thrived. He'd outlasted trends, addictions, scandals, even death. He'd become a kind of living myth. July 2025. A warm breeze rolls over the rooftops of Aston, Birmingham, the kind that carries the scent of childhood memories if you stand still long enough. Just a few miles from where a teenage John Michael Osbourne once skipped school and nicked chocolate bars, thousands gather at Villa Park, home of Aston Villa Football Club. But tonight it's not about football. Tonight it's about something far older, deeper, louder. Tonight it's Ozzy's night. It had been hinted at, whispered about for months. One final show, one last gathering of the faithful, a chance for Birmingham's most chaotic son to come full circle. And there he was, seated, frail, slow, voice raspier than ever. But there, a black-clad silhouette raised into the lights, clutching the microphone like a lifeline. And when the first riff of Paranoid roared through the night sky, it wasn't just a gig, it was a homecoming. The crowd wasn't just watching Ozzy, they were with him. Thousands of voices howled in unison, not polished, not perfect, but full of love. Sharon stood side stage, tears barely held back. Jack and Kelly watched their dad take his final bow, wrapped in a storm of noise and nostalgia. There were no gimmicks, no pyrotechnics, just Ozzy, vulnerable, weathered, glorious. He didn't scream, he didn't run, he sat and sang. He sang like a man who knew this was it, the last chapter, the last goodbye. He sang to the ghosts of Sabbath, to Randy Rhoads, to Lemmy, to all the lost comrades from a world built in smoke and thunder, and to Birmingham, always to Birmingham. After the final note, Ozzy didn't say much, he didn't have to. He looked out at the crowd, the city that made him, and simply whispered, "Thank you. I love you all. God bless." He left the stage slowly. One last wave, one last spotlight. 17 days later, he was gone. The world awoke to the news in disbelief, though maybe not surprise. Ozzy Osbourne had finally left the stage. But this time, for good, the tributes poured in, fans, musicians, even heads of state. Not just about the music, not just about Black Sabbath, but about Ozzy, the man. How he struggled and stumbled, how he broke and healed, how he never pretended to be anything but what he was, a broken, brilliant, hilarious mess of contradictions. And yet through it all, he lived. Ozzy lived longer than anyone thought he would, longer than the lifestyle should have allowed. He cheated death more times than we'll ever know. And in the end, he didn't die in some hotel room far from home. He died surrounded by love, with Sharon at his side, just a stone's throw from the terraced streets of his youth. That in itself is a miracle. And the city smiled, because Ozzy Osbourne wasn't just a rock star. He was the rock star. A man who embodied chaos but fought like hell for peace. A clown and a poet. A madman and a prophet. A dropout who rewrote music history. He taught us that you don't have to be perfect to matter, that scars don't make you less, they make you real, that survival in the end is its own form of greatness. And even now, with the lights gone and the stage empty, his voice lives on. In every riff, every howl, every pair of black Doc Martens laced by a teenager discovering Sabbath for the first time. Ozzy didn't just leave a legacy, he left a heartbeat. And somewhere in the back alleys of Aston, if you listen closely on a warm summer night, you might still hear it. A distant laugh, a muffled Sharon, and the faint forever echo of the Prince of Darkness.